Good afternoon, everybody. It's Train Tuesday. I've got Janek here. I did it right this time.
Yes.
And of course, myself. And we want to welcome you guys to Train Tuesday. I hope you all enjoyed seeing Matt on Friday. I know I did because, man, Janek, you and him are just a wealth of information. I don't know where you keep all that information. I can't remember where I put my keys half the time, let alone all the different variants of locomotives and such. But man, a lot of research that goes into something of that nature. And it was really cool to see, that locomotive undecorated like we had here running behind me. And just seeing, the fact that every single CP rail locomotive is different, just little subtle details. And I'm just amazed at how much work goes into one of those locomotives.
Yeah, Matt definitely did his homework on those, and working directly with CP was a huge benefit for us as well. It was too bad that Adam was having some connection issues, but hopefully we can get him back sometime soon. He is a wealth of knowledge even compared to Matt and I, especially on CP stuff. So hopefully we can get him back someday soon.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. Because like you said, he is a wealth of information, and he had a lot to do with those schemes on the CP rail locomotives. It's just one of those things where internet doesn't always play nicely with us. We know on my end it's happened a few times, and I think, knock on wood, yours seems to be pretty stable so far. So with that being said, we've got some things that I'm kind of excited about because I'm kind of a Burlington Northern fan.
That's right. Yeah.
Let me bring up these. We've got some Genesis Cabooses coming up, and these are based on the ICC production Cabooses, and these are Burlington Northern and former Burlington Northern, correct?
Former Burlington, yeah.
Yes, right. wrong Burlington. There we go.
Yeah.
Now I will say to everybody that knows me that they're not really Cabooses; they're Waycars. If you're a CB&Q fan, it's a Waycar. But these look really cool. So tell us a little bit. I know we did some Burlington Cabooses in the past. In this run, you decided to do something a little different. Tell us about it.
Yeah, like you said, we did Burlington CB&Q Waycars as delivered in the first run. And I believe that was a 1967 delivery for those cars. And as many of you know, the BN merger wasn't too long after that, 1970. So these cars, a lot of them still had pretty fresh paint. They weren't really in a hurry to paint a lot of them. And it's funny, as we were trying to find research and photos for these cars, the green ones were actually pretty uncommon. We found just tons of silver ones, but the green ones weren't too many of those. But people like this scheme, the green and yellow. It's really eye-catching. It's really iconic. And we wanted to offer them just because it's a good-looking scheme. It's a 1971 repaint, as you see on there. Got the ACI labels, got the COTS panels on there, and basically just all the details are as built on this thing because it's only about 4 years old. So it still retains all the CB&Q features, just with a new coat of paint.
Yeah, you're right. The Cascade Green was a really good choice, and I always liked the stylized logo that they came up with, the BN logo. I thought it was kind of a clever way of making up a logo. So yeah, they really do look sharp in that paint scheme, and we can tell this is an early 70s because we don't have the windows plated out like we started to see in the 80s and such. So this is perfect for somebody that's modeling, mid 70s, maybe right up until about 80 or so. Because I'm starting to see some lube plates here.
Yeah, that's about the time frame for these, pretty much the 1970s.
And then what I really like, and I've got a release we did a few years ago, the Jeep 7 in CB&Q, but with BN markings, and you've done the same thing here with this Waycar. It's still wearing its Burlington heritage to it, but if we look real carefully, you can see where it's been stenciled in as BN to indicate the new owners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like we said, not a whole lot of changes done to the cars at this stage in their lives. They're still some of the newest cars on the roster, Caboose, Waycars, that is.
I mean, these were extremely modern compared to what the Q had before. I mean, there was still some wood-sided cabooses being used in the 60s by the Q.
Hey, I remember seeing a photo of a BN Cascade green and yellow wooden caboose, and I thought, man, someone must be playing a joke, or so there's no way they were still using wood cabooses, but they were. That was interesting.
Yeah, it's true, and if you ever want to check that out, I'm going to go ahead and move this a little bit. This is one of my favorite books. I know, Janek, you probably got this book too in your collection, because I looked up a lot of the stuff that you found in there, and if you're a modeler like myself that does the 1970s, and of course, if you do early Burlington Northern, that's kind of cool. You get all kinds of different paint schemes, and since you guys have done the hard work again, I can run my former CB&Q Jeep with its original paint scheme, but different numbers, with a CB&Q new owner BN Caboose, which is just really cool. And that's one of those details in the past that modelers had to do on their own. So yeah, I'm going to assume this was based on a lot of feedback that we were getting.
Yeah, it was. And when we made these models, we wanted to do a bunch of green ones actually in the beginning, because like I said, everybody likes the green. And when we got to looking at it, it's like, most of them were silver. So if you're a BN modeler, you want to have representative cars on your roster, and you probably want to have mostly silver ones. So that's why we did what we did with those.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Want to thank everybody too that's coming on board right now. I see your comments out there, and I've got a treat for you all, you guys. We are reading your comments, so hey, welcome to the program. We're going to have some Q&A at the end of the show like we always do, but I figured I was talking to somebody at work the other day about just this, and he sent me a couple of pictures, and I thought, you know what, we need to get this gentleman on to talk about these Waycars. And so I'm going to bring on somebody that you probably all know, this Cody Grivno from Model Railroader. Add him here. Hey, Cody, how's it going?
Oh, I'm doing well, Jim. How are you? Janet, good to see you. How you doing?
How's it going, Cody?
Good. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Definitely. So tell me a little bit. I mean, we started this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and you sent me a really cool picture that your father took of a former CB&Q Waycar. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that was a picture taken way before I was born, early 1970s in my hometown. It's a picture I've always, I remember having the prints growing up as a kid and going through them all the time. And that one survived mainly through my childhood, where I'm going, little kid hands through pictures. But it always struck, just the light on it and that paint scheme. You got the old track scale there in the background. That picture we'll look at in a few minutes. But yeah, it always struck me. And then growing up too, in Burlington Northern Country, there were still, like Janek said, a lot of silver Q, Colorado, and Southern Waycars still in their original silver paint well into the mid 1980s. So yeah, I would agree with him totally that they hung on a long time and even kept their running boards and ladders, as we'll see in some of the pictures too.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's always interesting to see, I think sometimes as modelers, we see the original roads and the new roads, and we kind of forget that transition of ownership. And so this will be a great presentation that you brought with us today. You said these are all from your father, right? These pictures?
Most of them are. A few are from stuff that I shot of BN era cabooses when they were repainted, and then One's from my former colleague, Jim Hediger. I wouldn't call this a comprehensive history by any stretch, but just to kind of give everyone a feel for all the different paint schemes he's wound up in, the different patch styles, different placements of the COTS panels, the ACI labels, things like that. Some that were put in pool service and later taken out where they spray painted over the P on the side and on the cupola too. So, yeah.
Well, that's great. So guys that are tuning in, you didn't know you're going to have a mini RPM meet, and this is what it kind of feels like. And I'm excited because I'm a little biased, and I think we're in for a real treat. So what I'll do is I'm going to minimize myself and Janek, let you have the screen, and if you want to go ahead and send me that, I will let you share your screen.
Sure, I'll get the PowerPoint here for you. All right, Jim, you should be good to go. There we are. All right, so yeah, Jim, this is that picture we were talking about here. I have a little bit less dialed out picture here. We can kind of see the picture you're talking about. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to show some different books. Jim showed one of them there, the Robert C. Del Grosso Burlington Northern Caboose book. But this is from another really wonderful resource. It's called the Burlington Waycars. It's a really thick book, but it's a great resource if you want to know anything and everything about Q Waycars. So these are the three different classes here. We'll start with the NE13, which you guys did in your first run, and then the NE13As, which is the current run you're doing, and then the last run was the NE13Bs. So you can see the different Burlington Northern number series as well as their heritage, when they were built and renumbered, and some of their features. So the shot that my dad took in the early 70s is an NE13. You can see it has the full red and black stripes going off the herald. And the neat thing about how this one is patched, guys, is you can kind of see a little bit of where the road number was painted over on the cupola, and again on the upper left corner there where it said CB&Q. You can see that this one has been put into pool service here. It's got that P stenciled on the side. And then here's another one that was repainted, and as you can see, this one's at the end of its life here. It's been struck out sitting in Thief River Falls, Minnesota. This one is kind of neat because you can see here that the windows have been plated over like we were talking about, so this definitely puts it into the 80s. Again, you can see this one is in pool service, and here you can see how the COTS panels were stacked vertically, and then the wheel inspection dot. Here are a couple close-ups. So it was interesting as I was looking through doing research on this particular road number. It had a built date listed as March of 64, but if you look in the COTS panel here, it's 9 of 64. So I don't know if someone got that wrong when they were putting that together or not. And then another neat feature of the Q Waycars, down in the lower corner, they have this equipment truss plate here. So you can see the truss number 4 from 1963. Here's a shot that Jim Hediger took down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This one's from 1981. And it's kind of interesting on this. I noticed by the 80s, many of those Waycars were riding on roller bearing Caboose trucks, but if you can see here, this one still has its solid bearing trucks. And another thing I found interesting too, usually when you see the stencils on the truck side frames, they typically put them down here or on the top, and this one has the road number stenciled vertically right by the springs here. Couple other things I'd like to point out here. I don't know if this was painted over or they took the ACI plate off of here. You can see where that was. And the end cage on this one is a little different as well, because typically it had this vertical bar here, but most of them I have seen do not have this horizontal bar and then the vertical bar coming off in the middle here. So that's kind of unique, and this is the only photo I've seen showing that. Now here's another example. This one's an NE13A, so this would be the series you're modeling right now. Typically, BN was pretty good about leaving the original markings on cabooses, but I have seen examples of Q and GN and NP cars where the original herald was patched out, and this is an example here. This picture's from about 73 or 74, I would say. Again, you can see another one here in pool service, ACI label, and then just the BN stencil and road number. Now here's another NE13A. This picture was taken around the 1980s. I want to say probably 84, 85. As you can see, the silver paint's pretty worn out. This one here was in pool service at one time, but as you can see, it was spray painted over. The plates too, by this point here, you're looking, what, probably 15 years removed from the merger. So I'm guessing silver wasn't a real stock color in the shops department anymore, so they probably went with a gray or some silver they could get, you know, limited quantities of for doing patches like this. And another thing here, I know this is something, Janek, I'm sure you deal with all the time, is how the placement of details and labels varies from model to model here on the or from prototype to prototype. So here you can see the ACI panel, wheel inspection dot, and then the COTS panel stacked vertically here. Now here's another one from the NE13A class. And you can see here how the ACI label is up higher, COTS panels are horizontal, and there's no wheel inspection dot. Again, this is kind of neat because the patches were very, you know, they just put the number and reporting mark right over the silver paint, so it aged at the same, you know, the same rate as the rest of the paint on it. Now this is actually kind of a fun picture. As I was going through my collection, one of the road numbers you're doing in this run is Colorado and Southern 10626, and I actually had some shots of that one from the mid-1980s. So here's a shot showing some of the end details on the Waycar. And another picture of it going over the grade crossings. You can see this one's had its ACI panel painted over, and then it has the horizontal COTS panels and the wheel inspection dot. Then here's the 10628, another one from the NE13A class, and you can see likewise it's had its ACI label painted over, and then it has the horizontal COTS panels and the wheel inspection dot a little closer together. Here's a close-up of the COTS panels on the NE13A, the 10628. One thing I found interesting, guys, is you look here, and I only noticed this on a few of the Colorado and Southern prototypes, so it looks like some sort of drip rail. And if you guys want to chime in, but I only saw this on a few prototype pictures of the Colorado and Southern cars. So I don't know if you had any information to add on that, or. All right. I think I've lost connection here. Janek, are you there?
Can you hear me now, Cody?
I can hear you, Jim. Yep.
Okay. Let me bring Janek in. That might have something to do with the.
Yeah,
there we go.
Backstage, so you couldn't hear us.
So yeah, but I was talking about the drip rail here. I think that's what that is. But like I said, I only saw that on a few Colorado and Southern cars. So I don't know if that was a later addition or what the story is on that. But I found that kind of an interesting detail. We'll go along here. Let's see. Can I get control of this again, Jim, please, if possible?
Yeah. Let's see. Working for you?
Let's see here. Nothing yet.
Let's see.
Or if you just
showing.
if you want to advance it from your end, that's fine too. So
let me try something here real quick.
Sure. Live TV, folks, right?
Yes, live TV. Try that again.
Sure. Let's see here. I'll try it here. Is that working for you now?
Yeah, there we go.
All right, perfect. Yeah, and one thing here, I'm just going to go back a slide here. So this one here, this picture was taken probably, I want to say, around 84, 85. And you can see at this point it still has its full-length ladder with all the rungs and then the running boards on top. But then a couple of years later, you can see that those top two rungs are removed and that the running boards are now off of the Waycar. So that's kind of the neat thing. If you really want to pinpoint your model railroad in a specific time, those are the kind of details that can further reinforce your theme. And then just a few other pictures here. I've got a NE13B Caboose. This is the 10,000. And this picture here, again, from the 1980s. And like you were saying earlier, Jim, many of those Cabooses, or Waycars, I should say, were getting their windows plated over. But this one had yet to have its windows plated over. Again, you can see a little different placement on the COTS panels and the wheel inspection dot and the pool stencil. And this picture's from 1995. This is a Waycar that was sold to a private owner in West Fargo, North Dakota. another NE13B. Caboose was built in 1969, and even at this point in 1995 was still holding up pretty well. You can still see some of the silver paint peeking through there, but still kind of a neat thing to see. All right, and then we have another one here, an NE13B that was repainted into the Cascade green. So you can see here some of the old Telltale Q features here with that rectangular cupola window on the ends of the cupola. You can see this one's had its running boards removed, as well as the ladders, top two ladder rungs removed. Now, some NE13 cabooses were even rebuilt in the 1990s, between 90 and 92. Burlington Northern worked with Western Fruit Express to rebuild 125 cabooses of different history here. This one happens to be an old CB&Q NE13, actually FWD. The FWD 154 and the CB&Q paint was one that you guys had done in your first run here, and this is how it looked like later in life as Burlington Northern 12575. And here's an NE13 that was rebuilt. This one is originally the Q13696. As you can see, it's Burlington Northern, not Burlington Northern, but kind of neat to see that as it looked, you know, a caboose here in a modern BN appearance. And then a few references. I know this is something Jim and Janek, you guys do a lot with your job, is trying to track down the prototype information. And these are just some books if you want to learn more about the Waycars that CB&Q had and later when they transitioned into the BN era. This is Waycars of the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy by Daniel Holbrook and Stephen Lorenz. This is from Prototype Modeler in 1978. An earlier version of Robert Del Grosso's BN Caboose book. This is a cover image of the well-worn copy I have. This is from 1993. And then we have the one that Jim was showing earlier, the Robert Del Grosso book covering 1970 to 1995. And then the real ultimate authority on Burlington Waycars, this book here, the Burlington Waycars. Like I said, I think it's over 750 pages, tons of photos, rosters, drawings. So if you need to know something on Q Waycars, that's your source. And then just for fun, a couple of pictures of me from the early mid-1980s here with BN Waycar 10143. So they hung on a long time, and I was fortunate to get to see some of them rolling on the BN rails. So that's it, Jim, for my presentation here. So
yeah, that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that. And like I said, I'm kind of biased to a lot of these Midwestern roads. Certainly the CB&Q here in Owl Points West, and then later the BN. So really cool, and it's a great perspective of again, where on the surface they all look the same until you start getting closer and you see the minute little details that are different.
yeah, especially when you had all the GN and NP and SP&S equipment coming into the fold too, and later Frisco. I mean, that was always the neat thing on the caboose tracks in like Grand Forks and Dilworth, which was up where I grew up. And you started looking for some of those features, be it the window spacing on the sides of the cupola or the shape of the window on the ends of the cupola. And it was always kind of fun. It's like, oh, and then even some of the ones that were built for BN where those last runs where they just had the smoothed over sides so they could avoid having to deal with the window glazing on the sides of the cars.
Yeah, now you had mentioned the CNS and the FW&D. We've got some Colorado and Southern that we're also going to do in that run. And as you can see, these again are, 1970s, but perfect for, because like you said, I mean, once the merger happened, I mean, these were on the CB&Q already, and they had their own minute details, as you well pointed out. And then later on, when they became BN, they just kind of added to that list of items from the other railroads. So it's kind of cool how, for this run, we not only did the Burlington Northern, but we've done the predecessor roads too. And it just makes modeling that much more interesting. It allows us to focus in on a more specific time than we did in the past.
That's right. And just a lot of these prototype details too, like you guys have recreated on your model here, the window details and the end cages that really were those little details, but make those models so distinct.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where for the guys that, you know, don't do modern, the Caboose was many things to the railroad. It was a traveling office. It was a point shoving platform at some points. I mean, a really important piece of equipment back in the day. And naturally, things have changed now. So, but you still will occasionally see these. I know even out here on the CNIC, I'll occasionally see one of these, albeit everything has been plated up because it's more of a shoving platform. But really cool. And now, quick question about the pictures that you shared with us. Now, your dad was always a rail fan, was he? Was he a modeler as well?
He modeled a bit in his teenage years, yeah. He went into the Navy, so he kind of got more into military modeling, but I always had a spot for trains. And when I was really young, early 1980s, he made cast metal railroad heralds. So he took a lot of trips to the railroad yards, and so he was taking pictures of different railroad heralds, because, by that, there were even some of the old long gone railroads that their equipment was still hanging on. So we were able to get pictures of that. And one of his high school classmates was a conductor on the BN, had his own caboose in the yard. So that was always kind of neat too. And
very cool. Well, we really do appreciate that. Looks like the guys out there really appreciated that as well. Had a couple of questions saying, hey, I think we had a Canadian in the audience because he said, are we just going to look at vans today? No, we're not going to look at just vans. We've got some other things too. And Cody, this will be good for you to see too, because you had just sent me a book by Jeff Wilson on railroading in the automobile industry. And if you're interested in these cars that we're about to show you next, you're going to want to take a look at what we're going to be offering at the same time as these cabooses. So let me go ahead and bring those up. And we're going to obviously be showing the 60-foot. These are Genesis series 60-foot auto box cars. And these will fit in the same timeline as the Waycars or Cabooses, depending on your flavor. We're going to be offering those in the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, the Milwaukee Road, Louisville and Nashville, Norfolk and Western, Frisco, and Southern Pacific. So, and also as delivered and in the Prime for Grime, which is a really, get a lot of guys that really enjoy that Prime for Grime, making it really look realistic.
Yeah, maybe someone out there knows the story on the Norfolk and Western cars. If you look at the patched out area of lettering on there, sure looks like it could have said Southern Pacific on there. But yeah. I am not familiar with the specific heritage of those cars.
Yeah, and Janek, I came across a photo too, and I was doing a little research on these last night, and I noticed there was another Norfolk and Western car that must have been of Union Pacific heritage too. So it was kind of interesting. They must have compiled their fleet from different hand-me-down cars. So
yeah, it looks that way.
So briefly, these cars were mainly used in the automotive industry. They didn't technically transport finished automobiles, but they did transport automobile parts. And one thing that, sometimes I think we kind of gloss over and forget, when you have a automobile manufacturing facility, you don't just have the building that manufactures the car. You have a place that does the frames, another place that does the bodies, another place that may do the glass. And so in order to get all those parts to the main assembly area, a lot of railroads had dedicated boxcars like these for that purpose. And as you can see, most of these, Janek, these are mostly, we're looking at late 60s into the early 80s with what we're offering here, correct?
Yeah, that's true. As you can see, some of these have the roof walks. It looks like all of them still have the roof walks as far as road names that we're offering in this run. And they still have the tall ladders as well. So it definitely indicative of an earlier era of freight cars. Sort of a transitional car, really, because you got this big 60-foot car, but still has roof walks and tall ladders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean it's one of those things with the auto carrying cars, that we're used to seeing nowadays. They tend to get all of the attention, if you will. Sometimes we forget about the other specialized cars for that industry, and so you would see a lot of freight cars like this in use, in and around the manufacturing facilities of all the different automobile makers. So again, these are Genesis, so they're going to be very detailed. A lot of work has gone into them as far as authenticity with the paint schemes. A lot more research that you had to do on these, I guess, Janek. I mean, it's not just slapping paint down. There's a lot of research involved, isn't it?
There is, and I think as someone pointed out, we have offered these paint schemes before, but we are offering different road numbers this time. So if you have any of the ones that we've released in the past, there aren't any duplicates, which is always nice. If you're building an auto parts train, you're going to need quite a few of these cars. The other thing I wanted to say, sort of related to the prototype, is that these were actually some of the smaller cars that were in the automobile parts shipping trade, so to speak. These cars were for carrying the heavier components like engine blocks and transmissions, and then the bigger 86-foot cars is what they used for carrying like the body panels and things that take up a lot of space that didn't weigh as much. And that's another reason why these had the end of car cushioning that you see, is to keep those valuable parts safe inside from rough train handling.
Yeah, that is a good point. So you can kind of tell just the way the freight car's been manufactured, the way the trucks are on the frame and everything, just for the reasons that you were talking about, the heavy items that it hauled. The other thing too is a lot of these had on the interior, they had like a rack system that could be adapted for different types of body panels or auto parts, things of that nature. They were pretty much kind of like a modular type setup. So they really did serve a lot of purposes. And so if you are one of those that likes to model a lot of auto manufacturing in your industrial areas of your layout, or even if you don't, if you just want something cool to run through, these are definitely worth looking into. And again, like I was saying earlier, the book that Model Railroader is doing is Railroading in the Automobile Industry, and it's by Jeff Wilson. It's a very thorough book going into all aspects of transport of vehicles and parts by rail, and it's really interesting. It's actually more vehicles transported by rail now than there were back in the 70s, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, the railroads definitely stepped up with introducing car types that could carry more cars and carry them safely. That was a big thing versus what you saw in the beginning. They're a lot safer now, safe from damage.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, if you look at the early days of transporting automobiles, they did use a boxcar, and they would load on average 4 cars in a boxcar, and they had a interesting rack system in there that they would allow them to do that. But if you look at it, the way they did it back in the 30s and even early 40s, man, I don't know if I'd want my car transported like that. After all that, of course, I guess it could be argued the cars back then had a little bit more sheet metal to them. Maybe. But it's a little bit more substantial of a vehicle back then. But it's really interesting to see the evolution. And if you're interested in that, I highly encourage you to pick up that book. it is very interesting. And of course, a lot of us here, we're into both trains and sometimes we're into automotive stuff too. So if you're into those two things, it's definitely a book that you're going to want to read. So Cody, in this part of the show, what we normally do is we just say, hey, what are you guys working on? And sometimes guys out there like to see if we're working on something besides work. And since you're our guest today, Cody, maybe you can tell us or show what you've been working on lately.
Well, a lot of it's been with the MR&T. In fact, I don't have a slideshow for this, but our Jones Island project here. You can see as low-end cars are falling out here. But you can see here the track plan for Jones Island here. This was originally Kelly's Island on the MR&T, and I'm working on a couple structures for that. One's going to be a detailing project for a grain elevator. Another one's going to be a scratch build of the Milwaukee General Cargo Terminal Building number 2. So that's been a lot of fun working on that, researching that. I'm also working on a Lake Superior terminal and transfer switcher for a friend of mine. And so keeping busy. Railfanning too. So
there you go.
Got to get out and enjoy these last few days before the snow flies. So
yeah, I don't know about up there, but down here, it's probably our last warm week. And Janek, I guess, do I dare say you're lucky that it's always warm, or is that kind of a curse too?
It can be a curse. Like last week, I think it got into the 90s in October. So if you're into that, it's great. But me, not so. I'm more of a 50s and 60s kind of guy.
There you go. I had seen where you, Cody, were working on that layout, and you were the name of the series is Rehab My Layout. Is that correct?
Yeah, Rehab My Railroad. Yep. Rehab
Your Railroad. And so you guys have been working on that. When did you start working on that?
We started on it before COVID, and so we're just making progress, trying some different techniques where we've gone in. We have one section of the layout that we've been able to lift out so we can take it into the workshop and work on it from all 4 sides of it, because one's going to be a boat base and it's right up against the wall and the hallway windows there. So we want to make sure we could pour the resin without having it all running onto the floor. So
yeah, definitely. Well, that's cool, and that's something that you guys will be working on for a little bit. You're updating it monthly, both in the magazine, and you're also doing it online as well, right?
That's right. Yep, online on the Model Railroader Video Plus, and we'll have our trains.com rollout for our new website. So people want to stay tuned for that as well.
Very cool. So yeah, if there's a good thing we can take away from the pandemic, I don't know about you guys. I get a little bit more modeling in. A lot of us are working from home now, which means our commute is a lot shorter than it used to be. My Wrangler has gotten the best gas mileage it's gotten ever. So we have a little bit more time to actually work on our projects, and it's good to see that project layout that you guys are working on, because that definitely helps stimulate everybody. So if anybody out there has not seen this layout, where can they go to see it? To the Model Railroader website?
That's right. Yep. And it's going to be a monthly feature in the magazine as well. We started it back, so make sure I'm right. October 2020 was the first installment, and then it's going to be a monthly feature. Sometimes it'll be structures, sometimes track laying, just as the project rolls along. So cool.
Excellent.
It'll serve a lot of different audiences as we move through the projects. So
great. And I'm reading some of the comments as we're talking, and there's like a little debate going on, and it's actually an interesting debate. A lot of guys, and I'm not going to put an age on it because I think we all represent different ages in this group. But some guys like books, like Cody and I were showing. Obviously, Janek and Matt use books heavily for research, and myself for research for my own railroads. I've got a lot of books, and a lot of people can argue that, well, the internet now has got everything on it, and I can't speak for Janek, but he's shaking his head already. It's not quite true, is it?
Try and find anything on there about like GP7s, GP9s, F units, you're going to have a heck of a time. Yeah, you might find one or two photos, but the danger of that is always that you're not getting the full story. You're just getting one snapshot of one place and time, and you really need that a large amount of photos to look at next to each other and say, okay, 90% of the time they looked like this, and then there was the exception over here, and you want to try and focus on the typical. So, and then books are really great for that. They have rosters, dispositions, renumberings. It almost makes it easy in a way.
Yeah, I mean, if you're modeling the current, I'd say maybe 2000 on up, you've pretty much got it easy. I mean, you can usually find stuff pretty easily. If you in passing see a UP locomotive and you take note of the number, you can look it up on Google and find out what kind of locomotive it is pretty easily. But if you're someone that models an older railroad, say the CB&Q, for instance, you're not going to find a lot of pictures on the internet of CB&Q Waycars with the detail like what Cody was showing earlier. And that's where those books come into such, a great resource, because not only did those cabooses go on to serve other railroads, but they went on to lose some things, add some things along the way. So if you want to make it accurate for the time that you're looking at, you really want to look at books that cover that era. So yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword, everybody. I mean, I don't think there's really a winner or a loser in that argument or debate. I think both can be used depending on what you're doing. But there certainly is. Don't ever overlook the books and the magazines on the prototype, because there's a lot of stuff that we're always finding here at Athearn that we didn't know existed. Somebody will submit a picture, or we'll find a picture somewhere that we didn't know existed. And you're not going to find that on the internet because it's been in somebody's collection for years on end.
Right.
So, Janek, what have you been working on? I mean, I know you're busy. You're always busy.
Well, Halloween is my wife and my favorite holiday, so we definitely didn't do anything train related on that night. We were up late watching the Addams Family, actually. But I sort of did a crossover between work and my own stuff when I got these models in the mail from the factory, and I was like, yeah, this is work, but man, I'm enjoying looking at these things because these are cool. So why don't you go ahead and show those?
Yeah, you just showed me these this afternoon, and I'm going to go ahead and bring those up real quick. And like I was saying to you earlier, no offense, they're ugly, but in a good way, if that makes sense. I mean, for us modelers, it's a good thing.
It just looked terrible, and it's great.
It is great. I mean, this is cool. I mean, it's kind of sad for me since I like those two railroads, and I'm going to go ahead and get us out so we can get a
Santa Fe War Bonnet fans out there are probably trying to clear their eyes after seeing this. But what we got here is a pair of PRLX, that's Progress Rail Leasing SD75Ms. And so the story on these is that BNSF was getting rid of their SD75Ms. They sold them to Progress Rail Leasing. I think this was in the last couple of years, actually. And so now these things are out here roaming the rails coast to coast. So, you could see a war bonnet turn up on Norfolk Southern, or you can see a BNSF that isn't a BNSF on the BNSF or on some other railroad. It kind of boggles the mind, actually. But, some really cool versions with all this patching, fading, and if you look at the 238 there, you got the burned off yellow paint there on the engine compartment there. That's a really cool feature. Prime for grime all the way on these things.
Yeah, Definitely pretty cool. Let's see. Get a close up. I think you sent me another picture. Wow. And I mean, once again, if you look at the former Santa Fe unit, you've got that nice fade where they just pretty much painted over the original road number and made it their own.
Yeah, and actually BNSF at one time had an 8-digit road number, and so they just took off the first digit there. And if you look closely at the 238 in the foreground, you can actually see the remains of the first road number there, where they painted over it, just like you can in the real one. It's really cool effect there.
So these were when are these due, Janek?
So I just got these samples from DHL yesterday, so probably a month or two till they hit the stores.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I like those schemes. It's kind of hard to see, but at the same time, I mean, like, you're right. You're gonna see those out in their natural habitat, working for somebody else, and you'll see them all over the country, not just in their original locales.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah, some cool leasers there. Good for pretty much anything you could find you use for a rent-a-wreck for.
Yeah, definitely. Well, cool. So we'll be looking out for those in about the December time frame. So if you didn't get one of these in a pre-order and you're interested in one of these, might want to talk to your dealer. There's a chance that you could still get one of these in December. And again, if you're doing modern, now here and now modeling, these are pretty common. This type of setup is pretty common. So you're going to want to put this into your pool service and, definitely grab at least one of these. Very cool.
Yeah, I can vouch for on the CN around here. So,
right.
Yeah, that warm up. They are really tired looking.
Yeah, boy, it's hard to believe. Those are going on to what, 25, almost 30 years old. Some of them. So.
Yeah. I like Zach Pumphrey's comment. He says they were good at holding down the shop tracks. So if you're looking for something for that, good option there as well.
That's great. Well, as far as myself, I haven't been. I mean, my latest project is behind me and in front of me, where you guys can't see. We are working on an Athearn project layout, and we're hoping to get some video up, and it's going to be designed to just keep everybody in the loop. We know right now it's kind of tough because we don't have any train shows. We've definitely seen an increase in folks coming here to watch our live streams, but we are working on some things in the background to make it more attainable for you. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm working in my shop, it's kind of nice to have a YouTube channel going on in the background and get some ideas. So that's kind of what we're working on. The layout behind me, the N-scale layout, and Cody, I'm going to blame one of your associates for this shadow box. This is purely on David's shoulders. He was an inspiration on this. Now, if I can just find a track plan that I like, we'll have an N-scale layout behind me. But the HO layout will be an Athearn project layout. And we're hoping that we can get some feedback from you guys and make it kind of like a communal layout as we build it. So that's pretty much all I've been working on lately. Well, Cody, are you up for some questions?
Sure.
All right. We usually in this part of the program, what we do is we find a cool place to virtual rail fan, and that way everybody can take part. And then we also take some questions. So Janek's probably going to roll his eyes because it's like, we can just never get too much Burlington. But I had to select Galesburg this week again for our virtual rail fanning. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up.
That's okay. I was watching it over the weekend.
Were you?
Stuff. Yeah.
It's funny because it's only a few hours from my house, but I don't get out there that often. I really need to get out there a lot more. And we'll come back and we'll start getting some questions up here. And yeah, really, I mean, what you guys were talking about earlier, you know, books versus the internet. It's actually a great comment, and it's always good to hear what you guys are working on and what you want to get some feedback on. So, not a problem. We enjoy interacting with you guys like that. Let's see.
I saw one. You can go ahead, but I saw one earlier that I'm going to try to find.
Here's one that I'm gonna probably. Let's see. Did I lose it? Well, I'll just ask. They were asking for the. Here we go. What are the chances of doing your CB&Q detailed Jeep 7s in Burlington Northern Cascade Green? Yes, they would go great with new Waycars. What do you think, Janek?
Didn't we do one run of BN Jeep 9s? I want to say, and I wasn't the guy in charge of that, so I don't know what the heritage of those was. If they were Great Northern CB&Q.
I've got one from a few years back. Let me check.
Okay, but I mean, the short answer is that there's so many different options for DP and Cascade Green. Pretty much any configuration you can think of.
So a couple of years back, we did do the Burlington Northern X CB&Q Jeep 7s. They were in the Chinese red and gray, as delivered, or not as delivered, but repainted Burlington.
Oh, okay.
And they were relettered for BN. But yeah, that's what I have. And like you said, there's just so many versions of the Jeep 7 and Jeep 9s that we can do. It's just a matter of keeping up. So I wouldn't say it's impossible from possibility, but it's just a matter of getting to it. There's just so many roads we can do with those.
Absolutely. So I saw one a bit earlier I wanted to address. It was at 2:07 p.m. So
okay.
But it was by James Galton, and he said still waiting for the TH&B GP9 locomotive. And what I wanted to say to James is that he should come back in on the 27th to the Athearn website, and we'll be here hopefully December 1st. And I think he'll be happy with what he sees there.
Certainly sounds like it. Let's see. And I'm seeing it in the comments. We do get questions from time to time. Folks looking for parts for locomotives and rolling stock that they currently have. Janek, when someone is looking for parts, we make it pretty easy, don't we?
Yeah, that email parts at athearn.com is a great resource there. There's also the help at athearn.com if you've got something that is not working quite right or is missing something got damaged. Send an email over help at athearn.com. Let them know what you have, SKU. That's really helpful. And some pictures, and they'll try to help you out.
Brad's got a question for us. He wants to know, in the future runs of the SD70 ACU, could you guys do the CP730 with the Lord, and I'm going to butcher this name, I'm just going to put that out there right now, Stratacon's horse logo. So one of the things about when we do new locomotives and things of that nature, if you caught the show on Friday, Matt had already pretty much had the Norfolk Southern versions of the SD70 ACUs ready to go. And then CP came out with their heritage and military units. And just like with anything, just because of the nature of the manufacturing process, it takes us a while to catch up on runs. We kind of touched upon that in the previous question about the BN Jeep 7s and 9s. It's probably something that we've looked into. When it would be, as far as a release, would it be the next release? I couldn't tell you. We pretty much have to use a timeline with all of our releases, but it's a good comment though.
It is, and I don't know what it looks like off the top of my head, but we're working very closely with CP. It's probable that they have the artwork available for us, which would simplify it greatly. Looks like
according. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, the gates just went down. That's all.
According to Keenan, he said it's pronounced Strathcona. Thank you, sir.
There you go.
You would think, with a Canadian word, I would know that better than that, but maybe I've been in the Midwest too long. I don't know.
There was a Strathcona north of where I live, so that's where I recognized it from.
Ah, there we go. We should have asked you, Cody. Here's one that I like to bring up just because of my modeling. Just curious about the MEC GP7. Is the color right? Looks too yellow to me. So I have been a Main Central fan for many a year. The Harvest Gold that you're referring to, it is pretty much spot on. Now, that being said, and it's kind of tough for some of the smaller lines, especially New England lines. Boston and Maine's another one that's just sometimes a hair puller as far as getting the correct paint. Main Central was generally pretty good about painting their locomotives. We tried to model that locomotive in its repaint prime, which would have been in the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
The Harvest, and the Harvest Gold was kind of a yellowy orange color. Another thing that people don't always think about is that color, especially that color, is going to appear different under different lighting. If you've got it under natural light, it's going to look more of a rich yellow. If you've got it under a fluorescent light with a blue tint to it, it changes the color. It's really kind of odd. About a month ago, we posted a picture on social media of that one of the Jeep 7s, the number escapes me, with one of the Main Central books that I have. And, you can't really use a picture, as proof of a color. But, having seen some stuff up at the Conway Scenic Railroad that they've used, repainted into the famous Harvest Gold and Pine Green. Yeah. It's pretty much as it appeared when that locomotive got repainted.
Cascade Green's the same way, Jim.
Yeah. And now, while we're talking about Cascade Green, I had always heard too, and you probably would know this, I had always heard that Cascade Green was anything from almost a John Deere green to a apple green, just depending on where the locomotive or rolling stock got painted.
Yeah, based on the pictures I've seen, it really ran the gamut, especially early on. And even in later years too, when they went to the 91 repaints with the pinstripe between the green and the black, it changed a lot. So
yeah,
I wanted to say about that MEC colors that we used on there. They're the same MEC colors that we've been using on our other Main Central locomotives. If somebody has some Main Central paint chips that maybe they think is a better match than what we've been using, we're always open to working with stuff like that and trying to improve our colors. And so feel free to reach out to help@athearn.com if you've got a source like that, and let us know, and we'll be happy to take a look and see what you got.
Yeah, and Daniel Archer actually just posted too, and he's absolutely right. Technically Conway Scenic uses a different paint than what Main Central did. One advantage modelers of present day modeling have versus guys like myself that model stuff in the 70s is paint chemical has changed quite a bit, even the last 20 years. Take a look at when CSX came out with what the rail fans call the dark future paint scheme. They were using DuPont Imron, which was marketed at the time as one that wouldn't fade out. It wouldn't change over time. And that's true. The stuff that they're painting modern day locomotives, even if it's a heritage color, it's not going to be exactly the same as the heritage locomotive that it's replacing, if that makes sense. It's no different than me buying a 65 Mustang and stripping it down and repainting it. It's not going to be the same as it was in 1965, different chemicals. So yeah, we're getting some good questions and back and forth today. I mean, this is great because this helps everybody that's watching, everybody that's listening. So, keep coming with the questions and comments. We definitely enjoy this. I mean, we're modelers too, and we've got Cody here today, who's also a wealth of information. That a lot of stuff he's worked on over the years. How many years, Cody, have you been with Kambach?
About 18 and a half.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'll bet during that time on the MR&T, Cody, I bet the paint formulas have changed quite a bit, right?
Oh yeah, when Hediger painted the first ones, it was flow quill, and then we've switched to acrylic paints over the years, and so the blues. I mean, even we took some pictures. Time for a quick shameless product plug here. Our latest special issue on the Milwaukee Racine and Troy. This year's its 45th anniversary. And I did a 2-page story on the paint schemes of the MR&T, and it's interesting here. I don't know how well it'll show over the internet here, but like you can even see like our current blue, which is basically Missouri Pacific Jenks blue, and you can just see how it's different between these units here. So
that's cool.
And our railroad's not even our railroad's not even real. So.
Yeah, it's a lot of folks will ask us, Cody, and I know I've seen it asked in magazines too. Hey, I've got a Missouri Pacific locomotive, and what color blue do I use to match that? And different manufacturers do different techniques. Now, I can say that I know Matt and Janek, there's a lot more research involved than just picking up a bottle of paint and putting it on a locomotive. Is that something you can talk a little bit about, Janek, as far as the paint matching?
Well, somebody was asking too, what paint do you guys use? And there's no brand of commercially available paint that we use. All of our paint colors are proprietary, and actually we talked from time to time about bringing our own paint line to the United States, but that just wasn't really feasible because of the way that the paints are mixed over in China. They wouldn't really like us to do that over here.
Yeah. There's always differences for different chemical makeups and stuff that are okay to use and not okay to use based on what market we're selling to. So
yeah,
the government puts the hobby industry as a toy industry, so that means we kind of have the same parameters. Right.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I actually do around here is I'm in charge of all the paint chips and storing them, cataloging them, approving them. Is every 5 years or so we will get a new sample and compare it to the one that we have on hand, and if there's too much drift, if it's not close, we'll send it back and ask them to try again on it. And then the other thing that we do a lot is like I mentioned earlier, if people send us paint chips, color drift cards, sometimes someone got a hold of the actual railroad paint chips, or in the case of Canadian Pacific, Adam Meeks, he just sent us all the paint chips that they actually used for the locomotives. And I just took all those and all right, I'll send them straight to the factory after I gave them names. Of course, we code all our colors so that we can come back and use them again. But so that's just some of the ways that we arrive at these colors and maintain the consistency of these colors. Sometimes it's easier with some colors than others, like SP gray and scarlet. Our SP gray and scarlet, it's been great for a number of years. Haven't ever heard anybody complaining about that. But some of our other colors, as someone mentioned, the NKT green has been a bit more of a moving target. And depending on the photo you're looking at, the year it was taken, it's kind of hard to nail it down, and people have differing opinions about what it should be. So.
Yeah, and unfortunately for a lot of those older railroads that just don't exist anymore, a fallen flag, sometimes, it's a memory. What I might think is Boston to Maine blue might be completely different to somebody else that observed it back at that time too. And of course, the Boston to Maine, depending on what era you're modeling, could be pretty good as far as color drift, and other times it just depended on the day.
Well, and that's one cool resource. So like the Northern Pacific Railway Historical Association, they have a set of color drift cards for a lot of the common colors NPUs. And I think the New Haven's done that too. So those are always great resources for modelers. Again, to your point, Jim, about, paint chemistry changing over the years. But, at least with the historical associations, they're going to get you into the ballpark, more than memories will, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's something that we don't really talk about much. I know I'm a part of a couple of different historical societies for railroads that I'm into. Janek, I'm sure you've got a multitude that you're a part of, because quite frankly, I know just in my small world of lines that I model, there's a lot of stuff that you can't get anywhere else that you can really get from our historical societies.
Yeah, that's very true. I know at work we get a lot of the magazines like the C&W one, the C&O one, CNEI, SP. We get some really good stuff, some good inspiration from those magazines. Yeah,
there's still a contingent of folks out there that, believe it or not, are not on the internet, and they submit articles the old-fashioned way through mail, but they've got a wealth of information. And if you're looking at, maybe you're stumped at what you want to model with your particular railroad, those articles that come in sometimes on a monthly basis, depending on your historical society of choice, you're going to see stuff that you don't see on the internet. And it's just a wealth of information. So yeah, that's a good point, Cody. Cody, I'm sure you guys work with all of the historical societies when you're working on different articles or things of that nature.
Right. Yeah. Reaching out for reviews, things like that. There's some groups that we work with that do custom run cars for their railroads historical societies too. So they're great resources. So much information. A lot of the firsthand histories that they, like you said, Jim, that they publish in their magazines that, I'm glad that are being preserved, because if they aren't, they're gone to history.
Yeah.
It's so important. If you that's something for my modeling interests, where I've reached out and I've emailed people that have worked for the railroad or worked at the industry served by the railroad, and sometimes you'll get shut down. They don't care to talk, but oftentimes you'll find they just love to talk. They want to tell their story. They were proud of it, whether they worked for the railroad or they worked at the coal plant or wherever. They want to talk about it, and you never know what that'll lead to. Maybe they have pictures from showing a cut of cars at the industry or whatever, and in this day and age of email, you're out a few electrons. So
right. Definitely. Well, guys out there, what other questions do you have while we've got Cody? We're going to be wrapping it up here in a little bit, but if you've got some questions to ask the Athearn crew or Cody, now's the time. We've had some pretty good discussions on everything from where to find accurate information to colors and such, but here's your chance to ask some questions. So go ahead. I am watching the comments here. It's kind of slowed down a little bit. So Here we go. I think we've got something here, Janek, that we can add. Dave, he wants to know any chance of Athearn doing more mass call volunteer firefighters, blue and yellow tank cars.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we just delivered some of those soon, not soon, in the recent past, and I think they sold really well. So I would expect another run sometime soon. That stuff is always really popular. Those safety training tank cars.
Let's see.
For Cody, any new MR&T cars coming out anytime soon?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh yeah, there's some more we'll be having in 2021. There'll be 4 new cars. So.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Here's a question from Brian. Wanting to know if there would be a possibility in the future of maybe seeing Conrail former Reading wide vision cabooses in the future. We'd like to see the former Philadelphia division version in the Genesis line. That's a neat question.
Yeah, Conrail cabooses. I mean, who wouldn't want those? And Genesis, we got a whole slew of Genesis caboose projects that we could decide to work on, and it's just a question of what road names are we going to do next, because we've already announced certain versions, and there's a lot more than that we can do. I just got to decide which ones are the best, and it's kind of objective.
Yeah,
subjective, I should say, depending on who you ask.
Yeah, and I mean some of the questions that we get, just to kind of answer some comments I'm seeing. Yeah, you're right. We kind of have to answer in a general way. We can't give away all of our secrets. One of the biggest things I can tell you, folks, I know each month we come out with some great new stuff, and you may be excited about the BN and CB&Q Waycars, but if you model something else, you might not be as excited. So I kind of equate our monthly lineups as almost like a radio station. Maybe the song that you're hearing on your favorite radio station isn't playing, but it's somebody's favorite song. And in the future, your favorite song may play too. So we see the comments, and trust me, this is pretty much, Janek, your only escape right now from all the work that you've been doing.
Well, not counting the time that I take my lunch break and try to take a little breather.
They give you a lunch break?
Are you doing 5-unit impact cars from Randall Ellison? Off the top of my head, I don't remember if any of the road names that we're offering this time are 5-packs. But I know that there were 5-pack cars on some road names that we didn't do this time. And so, whatever, there wasn't a whole, these impact spine cars, it's not like there were thousands of these things out there. It was a little bit limited on the prototypes. So it's a pretty safe bet that whatever we didn't do this time is going to be up next in line for the next release.
Yeah, and I think we'll be talking about those on next week's program. And
yeah,
kind of a neat freight car. It's got a neat history to it. I'm seeing some requests for wood chip guns. Is that something we've been looking into, Janek?
It's something we'd like to produce. Yeah, I mean there are a couple prototypes of wood chip guns that you see out there still these days. I know FMC made some. There's smooth side cars. There's different rib side cars. So let us know what specifically you're looking for in the wood chip guns.
Cody, as far as personally on your own time and stuff that you work on, what do you think is your favorite prototype? I mean, what do you draw the most inspiration from?
I think the Burlington Northern, certainly, and the railroads that came into it. Right now, my modeling interest is right after the merger, that 70 to 74 window. It's such a great time like the GP5 that you guys did, the 1361 a few years ago. A lot of those engines are pretty common to where I was modeling. And that was just a really great era. And I also am interested in the modern era too. There's a short line out of my hometown. They're partially owned by a leasing company. So in addition to their own power, they have a lot of lease units coming and going off the property. So you'll see anything from tunnel motors to end cab switchers and all stops in between. So just, even going trackside, watching the Canadian National and Wisconsin Southern and CP around here, there's always something, you see a freight car, a locomotive, it's like, oh, that'd be a cool project. And especially now as you see some of these cars that are in second, third hand ownership. There's a train a few weeks ago, I saw a bunch of old 3-bay covered hoppers, old Denver and Rio Grande, Rock Island, and long since patched out, probably 2 or 3 owners removed from the original. But it's just that sense of history that I really am intrigued by and modeling that.
Definitely. Well, that's cool.
Looks like those shadows are getting long now that the sun sets earlier these
days. Yeah. We just had to set our clocks back to from daylight savings time, and man, the office gets a little dark around 5 o'clock now. So.
Yeah, just been noticing the shadows at Galesburg there. It kind of keeps getting longer, and it's just about got the signals covered up now. So
yeah, definitely. Well, Cody, I want to thank you for coming on board and sharing your father's collection with us. It was very informative, and I think everybody else enjoyed it. Would love to have you back on again at some point.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thank you, Jim and Janek, for having me on. It was a lot of fun, and keep up the great work. Appreciate it. So, we'll be in touch, and look forward to being with you guys again sometime.
Definitely. And again, real quick, if the guys want to see what you guys at MR are doing as far as project layouts, where can they go?
Yep, they can go to our website. So just go to Model Railroader, and then you can go through the magazine too. So a couple different ways. So you can see what we're doing on video and print, and we're always doing something new. So
good to hear. Well, great. Well, thanks again for coming on board, and we'll have you on again. And we'll hopefully get to see some more of your work in the future, and at least see that project layout that you're working on too.
Yeah, most definitely.
But until then, we're gonna sign off for the night. Let you guys get back to your modeling. We're gonna have some exciting stuff coming up in the next few months, so sharpen your modeling tools. There may be some contests in the future, so let's keep that in mind. Until then, I want everybody to remember to stay happy, stay healthy, and stay safe. I hope you all have a great week. Don't forget to vote if you haven't already. High greens, everybody.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, thank you.